Hey, I have probably never shared a table with somebody that has inspired me more, pushed me more. I was listening to Tony Robbins, I think, on cassette tapes. And to have the opportunity for him to come into my life the last few years has been an absolute blessing to me. And what I've learned is we have a similar why, which is hungry. We like to unleash the hungry inside of people to chase things, but at the same time, we have this common passion around, we think hunger,
yes,
the physical hunger, the lack of meals hunger needs to be solved.
Yes.
And I heard your story. I have the story, and a lot of the people listening know my story, that in Brazil, I get unleashed with an experience of Joaquin. He was a guard at a gate of a compound I lived in for a month. I got to know him really well. In Portuguese, my broken Portuguese, I got to know him. His two daughters he was so proud of. And then that rainy night, April 4th, 2000, I get a knock on the door and I knew something was wrong. I open inside the compound and there stands Joaquin with his head down. And in broken kind of Portuguese, sad, through crying, he says, "It's been 2 full days that my kids haven't had a meal." And I saw kids, my wife and I, Annette and I, with kids not able to look at us. Shame, you know that.
Yeah.
And so our family, we fast 48 hours every January. It's kind of a little bit of a memory of this is a wrong that should never happen. Everybody deserves a meal. But you had an experience, and I'm a big believer. Moments can create, threads in you that never go away.
100%.
So tell me yours and lean into that moments thing too, Tony.
Yeah, no, I was, I think you know a little of my story, but for those watching, I was 11 years old. I had 4 different fathers. They come from a kind of a rough background. My mom was a very intense lady, and they came and went, and none of them really did well financially. And so we found ourselves at Thanksgiving where my dad was unemployed and we had no money and no food. And when I say no food, not literally, we'd have crackers and peanut butter, but it's Thanksgiving. Everyone else is having a big dinner.
Yeah.
And so it was, my parents were fighting and saying things that you can't take back. And I have a younger brother, 5 years younger sister, 7 years younger. And so I was trying to keep them in the other room, not listening to this. And what changed my life was a knock on the door. And I go there and there's this tall guy standing there with 2 bags of groceries, one in each hand, and an uncooked frozen turkey on the ground and in an uncooked pot. And he said, "Is your father here?" And I'm like, "Just one moment, And so I go to get my dad. I was so excited because I thought this was like Christmas morning on Thanksgiving, right? This is incredible. And my dad, I said, "The door's for you, Dad." And he goes, "Well, you answer." I said, "I did. It's for you." He goes, "Well, who is it?" I said, "I don't know." And I'm just 11 years old and I'm just like waiting with bated breath. And he opens the door and it was not what I expected because my father got angry because he looked at the man and he said, "We don't accept charity." And he went to slam the door and the man had leaned in slightly. And so the door hit his shoulder and bounced open, which made my father even more upset. And he said, Sir, I'm just the delivery guy. Somebody knows your family's having a tough time and they just want you to have a great Thanksgiving. My father said, "We don't take charity." He went to slam the door again. But at this point, when he leaned in, his foot now tripped over. So it hit his foot and bounced open again. Now my dad was even more upset. And then the guy said this, and he didn't say it to be mean and didn't say it in a mean way. But he saw me, he's got groceries in his hand, and he nudged his head towards me. He goes, "Sir, don't let your family suffer because of your ego." And the vein, I can see it like it was yesterday. The veins on my side of my dad's neck were like going like this. He turned beet red. I thought he was going to punch the guy in the face. And then there's this moment where he just dropped his shoulders, shame, and took the groceries, threw them on the table, slammed the door, did not say thank you, and stormed in the next room. And I was shocked. I was like, why isn't he happy? Why isn't he excited?
Yeah.
And I didn't understand then what I understand today. It was like all of us are controlled by 3 decisions. The first decision is, what are you going to focus on? You and I decided to focus on this project together. Thank God. I'm really grateful for that. But whatever you focus on, you feel. If you focus on what's wrong, you find what's wrong. Like what's wrong is always available, so is what's right. My father focused on the fact he not supported his family. I know that because he kept saying it under his breath. But as soon as you focus on something, your brain has to make a decision. What does this mean? And
that's the second
decision. That meaning controls your emotions. Is this person disrespecting me? Is this person challenging me? Is this person coaching me? Is this person loving me? Well, you're going to have a very different emotional response if you think they're disrespecting you versus loving you, right? And then once you have that emotion, the third decision your brain makes is, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And my dad, the meaning for my dad was he was worthless. He had not taken care of his family, because he said it over and over. And he decided to leave our family, which at the time I thought was the worst event of my life. It was extremely painful, but obviously you live long enough to have other experiences in your life, right? But the bottom line is, that day I made 3 different decisions, and I didn't figure this out till later. I focused first on there was food, thank God. But the big thing that changed my life was the meaning. That's why I'm here today, because the meaning for me was strangers care. Because up until that point, I lived in a part of the community there that on the other side of the tracks, literally, no one seemed to care about anybody. There was no evidence somebody cared. And my father always said, nobody cares, they're all in it for themselves. And here I had this evidence because the person, whoever delivered the food, I still don't know who it was to this day. My mom thinks she knows who it was, but she's not sure.
Wow.
And that person changed our lives, but they didn't want any credit for it. And I was like, it blew me away. So I decided that day, someday I'm gonna double this. I'm gonna feed 2 families. And so when I was 17,
wow,
I went to the grocery store, and it wasn't super successful yet by any stretch, but I scraped the money together and I thought, I'm gonna feed 2 families. And I took 2 grocery baskets and I just went and filled them up. And then it was one of the most fun days. And then I remembered how my dad reacted. So I called a local church and I said, who do you know who needs help, but probably is too proud to come get it?
17.
Yeah, 17. And then I wrote this note and I said, this is just a gift from a friend. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Everyone has challenging times. And if you can do well enough someday, please do it for one other family and keep it going. But love a friend. And then I realized they may not speak English. So I took a friend of mine who spoke Spanish and wrote in Spanish on the back. So I borrowed my buddy's old van, and I didn't know how to drive a stick shift, so I'm grinding 4 guys' gears. And I come pouring around the corner here, and I come to the first house. And I grab all the groceries, and it's like, it's my life being relived, right, in a certain way. I knock on the door, got these groceries in hand, and this woman, I'm 6'7", so this woman comes up to about this tall against me, and she looks up, this Hispanic lady, and she says, oh, God, and she grabs my face and starts kissing me all over. I said, no, delivery boy. She goes, no, gift of God. I'm like, no. So then I remembered I had the note, so I gave her the note, flipped it over so she could read it in Spanish, and then she starts kissing me again. I said, no, and she goes, no, gift of God, and I'm trying not to cry. So I pointed, like, where did I put the food? And the house was smaller than this little patio, right? So she pointed, so I put the groceries down, and then all of a sudden I heard these screams. 3 boys, she had 4 total, but 2 of them hit one leg, 1 hit the other. And when I saw this food, these boys were so excited. And so then I had to leave. And so I go to leave, and I got to go deliver the other food, and she's got tears going down her face, and the kids are smiling. This one kid wouldn't let go of my leg. It was a beautiful moment. And I was like, but I got to go. So I was like, I didn't know how to say Happy Thanksgiving, so I went, Feliz Navidad, and she started to laugh uncontrollably. She's crying, and now she's laughing. And I get in the van, I'm trying to put the thing in gear, and I look in the rearview mirror, and I see 4 kids, huge smiles on their face on this little porch, and Mom,
Tony,
with it crying her eyes out, but with a giant smile on her face. And I just broke down. I cried so hard I couldn't see.
Yeah.
And I was like, get it together, and so I finally got the car driving, and I was like, why am I feeling these feelings? And that day I realized my worst day was my best day. Because if my father had stayed, I'm a good person, but would I be out on that day feeding people? I don't know. And then next year it was 4 families, and then 8, and I had a little company, and then I got to 1 million. And about 14 years ago, I said, I called my offices, it was shortly after 2008, 3 or 4 years later, and I saw that the food deficit was still so bad in this country. And I said, how many people have I fed in my lifetime? And it was 37 years I had fed at that point 42 million people. And so I said, well, what if I fed, I've scaled my businesses. What if I scaled my philanthropy? What if I fed as many people in 1 year as I've done in my whole life? What if I did more? 50 million people in a year. And then I went, what if I did 100 million? What if I did 100 million for 10 years and 1 billion meals? And that unleashed me. I was like, I will find a way to do that. And so, But as you and I have talked about, the secret to that was, I then said to myself, okay, if you got a 10-year goal, that doesn't mean squat. You're not called to do something the next day. One of my great gifts of working with you has been, you and I have the same urgency, the same drive. We got to solve this. So I was like, that means I got to get 100 million meals this year, and it took me 37 years to do 42 million. I better find another way. And then ideas exploded, and I did it. And I did it in 8 years. I did it with Feeding America as my partner. And then to finish the story, and how we came together, I was in actually Abu Dhabi. I'm going there tomorrow. And I was there with MBZ, the head of the country, and we had this beautiful lunch. And he called me that night and said, I want to have lunch again. He's a brilliant man, great privilege to do so. I said, of course. I get to lunch, and he said, I wanted 2 people to meet each other feeding the most people in this world. It was Governor Beasley from the World Food Program and myself. And he said, you two should get together. So we became friends. At the time, he was feeding, there were about 80 million people on the verge of starvation. 5 years later, it was 385 million. He won the Nobel Prize, but was really unhappy, to say the least, the bureaucracy there. And I said, leave the UN, come with us, we'll build strike force teams. We'll go and get things done without the bureaucracy. Yeah. And how the 100 billion came about is I said to him, I said, how many meals would it take, measurably, to, over 10 years, cover the majority of people who are hungry so that we can then find sustainable solutions? Because you can't do this forever. It's charity. He said, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 billion meals? And I said, let's do 100 billion meal challenge. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He goes, Tony, you're not going to raise 100 billion meals. I said, I did 1 billion meals. I wasn't a billionaire when I started. I've been blessed since I've grown.
Here we go.
And I said, 99 million people like me. So we started the Forbes 400. And I thought the richest people in the world, I got Governor Beasley speak, and he's very articulate, but more importantly, he's emotional. And I spoke, and we had everybody in tears. And I thought, we're going to get 50 at least people to join. 5 people signed up to do 1 billion meals each. I was like, this is not working well, right? So then we started adjusting and finding different ways. And we got to 62 billion meals. And as you know, in the beginning, you came and challenged, invited.
Yes.
You, and I didn't have to push you hard. You were fantastic to say, what would it take to go from 20 million meals you're doing to 100 million per year times 10? That's 1 billion meals, right? You'd be one of the billion. And you took that on and said, give me a little help on the capital. And I said, you multiply that capital to do it. And I want people to know this man went out and the money I gave him, he multiplied times 4 or 5, if I remember right. And it's like, wow, you're the right partner to have. So that's how we got to be at this point today.
So here we are, we're in New York City, and we use this as an urgent, I think, just to tell what happened here. And, I give the credit to God, I give the credit to the American farmer.
Yes.
And you as a catalyst. I also think you take Beasley, you take what you've done with Feeding America, others, is there's power in networking.
Yes.
But I mean, ultimately what we are launching into is that 100 billion meals.
Yes.
We did and announced really today 30 billion.
Yes,
30 billion
which
more.
means we're at 92 billion meals in 3.5 years.
There you go.
No one thought we could do it in 20 years.
There you go.
But you're a gigantic part of that, so we should talk about that.
I'm going to start with your story, and we'll back into this a little bit. But, protein's pretty personal to you.
Well,
and, there's a lot of people part of this shared table that are the farmers of America and around the world that raise crops, that raise animals, that care for animals. And man, they're proud of the product they produce.
They should.
And they don't really fully understand why, hey, that product isn't respected more, appreciated more. But we're in the middle of a protein revolution right now.
100%.
So tell me your protein story, because you've had in your dietary journey, maybe.
I was a vegetarian, I was a vegan. And then in order to do that, I finally at one stage felt like it just I wasn't having enough protein in my system. So I started having fish. And so I ate for performance, right? I got to get up in front of 10, 15,000 people and do 12 hours and keep their attention when they won't sit for a 3-hour movie usually. And I got to do that for 4 or 5 days sharp. So I have all these biohacking things, but I realized I'm going to eat that. So I had salad and fish every day. And the fish I'd have was either swordfish or tuna were my favorite ones. And as a result of that, unfortunately, our oceans are so polluted. They're the older fish. They eat all the younger fish. They absorb all their mercury. I genetically don't methylate well. So I came home from an event in London. I did 5 days and nights, 12 hours a day, blew everybody off, flew home all night, and jumped in my jacuzzi and collapsed, and then tried to get back up and collapsed again. And they rushed me to the hospital. I lost a fourth of my blood supply, burned the hole the mercury did in my esophagus. So I almost died. So that changed my dietary approach. And I said, okay, I got to have land-based protein. So I want to get stuff that's really raised by the farmer. So now I have a 10,000 acre farm of my own in Tennessee that we're doing. And that changed everything for me. And I started to feel stronger and healthier and much more balanced in what I was doing. So that part was just the personal side of it, the health side of it. And I ended up writing a book called Life Force, where I went out to find all the cutting edge tools to help people. What's the best, not only in diet, but the best things that you can do to stay as vital and strong in the world we are today. So to me, it's critical. But the bigger piece was going out to these food banks and seeing that they just didn't have any protein. They're giving people processed foods, all this things that I was doing when I was a vegetarian, right?
Yeah.
All
Sugar,
the
empty
pastas,
calories,
sugars, all the stuff that's built in that. Day-old bakery goods, yes, some great produce that we delivered for them, canned goods, but where's the protein? And so that is part of how we came about. Is like, I saw what you're doing at Hatch and said, this is so brilliant because you have a sustainable system there. But that's where the challenge was like, okay, can you go from 20? And you did. You went to 5 times the amount to 100 million meals a year.
Yeah.
But you
came to me, and we had, and I think just quick, the story of Hatch is, for those that don't know, is I got a wife that's working in a food pantry in Indiana, outside in a suburb, seeing people grab the 2-3 bags of groceries. And I talk. It's it's people making a good living, but they're 1 or 2 events away.
That's right.
So they're supplementing their lifestyle with a couple bags of groceries. That's a lot what food pantries are today.
100%.
So Annette is calling me, my wife, saying, hey, Jeff, we can't get proteins. I mean, outside of diapers, it's the most demanded thing, and we can't have a consistent supply. I go to a lot of my customers that I absolutely love, the ag, the poultry, the beef, the pork producers, and they say, hey, there are low demanded, high value pieces of every animal that's produced. And sure enough, hey, Hatch was formed by saying not charity, all 100% animal protein. We buy on a cost plus a dozen medium ags that aren't demanded as much. The farmer makes a little money on some that isn't demanded, and it's taken into a food bank system that has a budget that at the time when we started was only 2-3% animal protein. Now it's 14, and with what we're doing today, headed to 20.
That's right.
And now these food banks can say, hey, I can use a little bit of my budget and buy on a nonprofit break-even basis, save all kinds of money, get better food, and boom, Hatch is formed. I get to 1 million meals with an amazing Hatch team and an amazing group of farmers. We get to 20 million, think we've arrived, and you say, Jeff, we got to get to 100. And today, with the announcement of raising $40 million from HHS, USDA, a lot of American protein industry that I call out and say,
really acknowledge
thank you to this industry stepping forward with either contributions protein. We are now creating an 800 million pound market for protein, 3 billion meals. With the 40 million, we create an infrastructure, and then everybody can have a value-based make money. And we're going to create 3 billion meals and close the food protein gap in the American food bank system.
And no one thought it could be done. And when we started, 6 months ago, we start this right after the first of the year.
Yeah, when the dietary guidelines changed, you called me and said, let's go.
Let's go. Let's see you go to the next level. And we were talking about cutting it in half at that point, which would be 1 billion meals a year, a little more than 1 billion meals a year. And then we got to that number. But most people know, I really want to thank all the people, the ag people, the poultry people, the beef people, because without your help, we wouldn't have got this done. I put in about almost a quarter of it myself initially, just because we were so shocked by people not in the farm industry who would say things like, well, this is controversial for us to be giving free food. And we're like, have you ever been to a food pantry? These are not people taking advantage, but in the ag industry and the poultry industry and the beef industry, they got it. They knew exactly what's going on. They know what's happening in communities. So I want to thank all of you.
I totally agree. And I think I just need to call out. I've had 37 years. I'm a 3rd-generation farmer.
Wow.
I'm an executive in an agricultural company, but my brother and I still do things, and my dad and my grandfather. But
where are your farms? I'm curious.
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York.
So the challenge to me is the American farmer and the global farmer. Their heads are down. They love the land. They love what they do. They didn't get in it for pride and for recognition. They know more about environmental stewardship. They know more about animal well-being.
That's right.
And they're so proud of the products that they produce. And this is an opportunity, I believe, to create a market for them to do good while still making some money on low-value protein and to have an impact and to create a model, as you said, here in America that could be replicated in other countries.
And sustainable. That's the best
sustainable.
Part, right? You're not running out for charity every time, and you're able to still take care of the people that are most in need.
I have a theory on 9. I say the 9 amino acids that come from protein that you can't get anywhere else. Genesis 9 says you should eat meat. We should raise animals for that. And 3 is by 9 years old, if you can influence the diet in a right way, you change healthcare and well-being forever.
They eat the same way the rest of their life.
You have a pretty strong philosophy on unlocking. Talk about the book Life Force here, and the whole idea here that you've said is it's all around, just this whole breakthroughs in precision medicine and transforming a life with your mental, mindset shift as well as a well-being of a dietary change? Talk a little bit about
Well, I
this.
think it's you got to do both. The mind and the body go together. I know people that were so health conscious, but their body's a disaster because they're all stressed all the time. They're worried about things all the time. So if you don't manage and master your own emotions, look, we're living in a time of unbelievable amount of change. There's going to be more change in the next 3 to 10 years than the history of humanity, and that's not an exaggeration. So those things are coming. That produces uncertainty. When people get uncertain, what most people do is eat or smoke or drink, but they don't eat usually the best things for themselves, right? So what we really try to teach people is what can you do to master your mind and emotion so that then you can make food something that is a great source of fuel, but also a great source of joy. One of the things I love about what I understand you do here is you talk about moments in your life when you're at the table with people. And I hadn't thought about that till you mentioned that to me right before we came on to sit down here.
Yeah.
And that's so true. Like so much of our life, it's not just our health. Our well-being comes from being together.
Yes.
And we live in a society where everybody's being separated. Everybody's in their little machine on their computer, looking at their phone. They're not connected anymore. And the dinner table, if you don't allow people to have phones at it, which in our household is absolutely, those get set aside. The dinner table is one of the few places where that happens still today for people, where the ritual of connection actually is there. So, but yes, I wrote Life Force because I was looking for the best tools to show people how to transform their health. Everything from stem cells to what can be done if somebody has Parkinson's. There's breakthroughs that most people are unaware of.
Yeah.
The time between when a breakthrough happens and your physician learns it is on average 17 years.
Right.
So it's food, it's human emotion,
Yeah.
and it's also knowing the tools to take care of yourself. I think those three kind of form a triad of what causes people to succeed.
Good. All right, I got to go to the table. You brought it up. So I
Yes.
do believe COVID taught my wife and I that the most powerful force, maybe the most holy place, the biggest equalizer
Yes.
is a table. And I will start that kitchen table, but
Yes.
it can be a boardroom table.
Sure.
It can be, a table at a church. It can be but it does allow us, and there's nothing I think more personal than to break bread around
Yes.
a table. The
Yes.
world needs community.
Yes.
And I remember that farmhouse in upstate New York.
Yeah.
My dad sat at the end by the window, and I was back in the corner by the stove, and that's where life was first taught to me.
Yes.
At a farm table after a long day's work, or my dad coming in, and we had that ritual, and we lost some of that. Tell me about a table that was a big deal to you, and then speak into that table.
Well, my family was more disjointed, so we didn't have those wonderful experiences. I had to make oatmeal every morning for my brother and sister, and out the door. My mom had an alcohol problem, but she had mixed it with prescription drugs, unfortunately. Beautiful woman. I wouldn't be who I am without her, but that made her quite violent, so she sequestered herself. So I didn't have these things growing up. But the first experience of that I had, that I would say that stands out when you ask the question is Pops, was the first Thanksgiving when I decided we're going to go feed people, where it wasn't just me feeding people. I brought together all my friends, and there were about 25 or 30 people. We had this very long table, and I said, Thanksgiving traditionally should be about giving thanks, and most of us just have a big meal. So how about we go out and we feed people first, got everybody aligned with it. So we made the meal was being made, and we all went out and we went and delivered all this food. And one of my youngest boys, Jarek, was with me, and he was only 4.5 years old. And we made these, I said, we can't just give people food. I want to go surprise people who wouldn't expect it. So we were in San Diego, went up to Oceanside, where it was a difficult area, and we went to this park there, and we brought food to people. We made baskets, made it so it was a gift. It wasn't like a handout. And my son, I'll never forget, because he shared at the table later on that night, we had this basket that was bigger than he was, and there's a man in the bathroom on the ground covered in pieces of clothing. And so I said, Jarek, let's help this. So I helped him bring it in to set it down next to the guy, and all of a sudden the guy reached up and grabbed my son's arm. And my son got a yelp, and there was a little internal yelp in me, and I was ready to do something, and then the guy just took my son's hand. I'll never forget this. Brought up to his hand and kissed his hand. And I cried about today. It was so beautiful, because that hooked my son on contribution. And and so we went that night at the dinner table. Instead of everybody just having their meal, everybody shared their story for the day. And that's when I realized I shouldn't just do this myself, I should share this. And that's when I started getting other people to join on me on these, what we call basket brigades. But there's been so many, but that to me was one of the more special.
So if I take the one big idea that maybe you have shared, and you got a lot of them, but the one that maybe has changed the most lives, and you summarize what that is, what is it?
Gosh, that's tough because, I go deep on so many subjects,
Yeah.
the body, your emotion, your relationship,
Right.
finances. But I think the most important, simple lesson is that our lives are controlled by our decisions, as simple as that is. We forget that. It's like if I asked you, why is your life the way it is today? If you look back over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years from how old you are, I bet there's moments you can remember a decision you made that if you made a different decision, your life would be completely different. Where you're going to go to school, what you're going to do for a living, who you're going to marry or get divorced, whether you're going to have a kid or not. There's so many of those. And so people think their conditions control them, but I would argue it's their decisions that control them.
Yeah.
Because you can have the worst conditions. Two people experience the same horrific event, but they don't have the same experience.
Yes.
Because they make a different decision about what to focus on, what it means, and what they're going to do about it. Those 3 decisions are happening every moment of your life. They're just unconscious. And if you become aware of those 3 decisions and you choose what to focus on, because the world's trying to control your focus. We're not in information age. Information age died a long time ago. There's too much information. We're drowning in information. We're starving for wisdom, right? So today, people want your attention, and that's what clickbait is for. They get paid, even though the article doesn't even say what they said there.
Yeah.
It's just get your attention. It's an attention economy. So you have to take control of your own attention, or the rest of the world will, your own focus.
Yes.
And then you have to decide what things mean, not let the world tell you. That's what makes you a leader. And then you got to decide, what are you going to do with that, right? So I think, it's in your moments of decision that your life is shaped. And if you don't most people try not to make the wrong decision or make a perfect decision. But I'll tell you a 2-second story. I met General Schwarzkopf. Some of the people watching may not remember him, but during the first, issues that we dealt with Iraq, he was our major general, 5-star general. And he was a big Wall Street guy, and he was a brilliant guy. And I got to know him pretty well. And I asked him, I said, decision-making, how important has that been? His decision-making is everything. That's what leadership is. And he goes, that makes you a leader versus a follower. Anybody can make the easy decisions. It's the person who makes the tough decisions, because everybody wants to make the right decision, and it's not how it works. And I said, well, who influenced you about decision-making the most? And he told me this quick little story. I'll tell you just real fast. He said he was working as a private for this general. And the general was a major player, like a 4-star general. And for 10 years, the Pentagon had been wrestling with a huge strategic decision that was going to affect the direction of the Pentagon. And people on different sides of it argued both sides so well that no one had made a decision in 10 years. And so finally, he said, we're going to make this decision. I want you to call the meeting. I want you to give me all the information to prepare me, and we're going to make a decision. So he shows up in the meeting. He goes, okay, boom. You got 15 minutes, convince me. One side, you had an incredible presentation. Then you got 15 minutes, convince me. Incredible presentation. And Schwarzkopf said with all he had read and all that they'd done, all the homework, he still didn't know what the right decision was himself. He had no idea. And he said, the general stood up and he said, do that one. And everyone, yes, general, and they saluted and he left the room. And he said, Schwarzkopf said he was so torn up inside about this. He's like, he has no clue what he just did. He couldn't possibly, I don't even know, and I've been studying it for 3 months, And he goes, he finally got enough courage, he said. He knocked on the general's door and he said, how could you make that decision? And the general said, a decision needed to be made, so I made it. And he said, I heard both sides. They were both very convincing, so I picked one. He said, because no one's made a decision in 10 years, now we'll find out if it's right or not. If it's the right decision, we'll continue. If it's the wrong decision, we'll switch. But I made a decision. To make no decision is the only decision you want to avoid. And he said, I never forgot that.
And I think decision making too liberates a coalition. We saw it in this 3 billion meals.
That's
was
right.
a coalition of people.
Oh, it never could be done by an individual.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. Danny Leckie, the Hatch team, everybody, the way everyone came together,
Yes.
the collective, I think is key. Another thing we learned, and I want to unlock this, is you can tell purposeful people.
100%.
And you can tell people that aren't. There's 3 very important days in your life, and I think one of them is, hey, when you get that calling. For me, spiritually, it's when I have found that relationship with God, and and then you find the reason that you exist.
That's right.
And then lastly, to your point, you do something about it.
Yeah.
And when you activate, and there's nothing to me, the other side of hungry for me, besides the meals hungry, is when you unlock somebody.
100%.
I have a quote on my wall that says, hey, we need to take people places they wouldn't go naturally themselves.
Yes.
Achieving
That's
results they couldn't imagine achieving. You pushed me to do that.
Yes.
But feeling a level of purpose they've never felt before.
Yeah.
you and I have had some experiences that have unlocked us.
Yeah.
And we were around a lot of people. The only reason what we're celebrating today happened was a whole lot of purposeful people.
Hugely so.
As a father, as a CEO, as a leader of a lot of coalitions, the greatest thing I want is people to find their purpose. If they don't, go leave. And I want to speak to the AI revolution and everything in the next 36-month change you have, but how do you unlock purpose?
So I think it's not something you can tell somebody. People think they have to have this incredible, gigantic purpose or this long written purpose. What I tell people is, who said you're supposed to have just one purpose, especially young people?
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know what my purpose is. Well, you have a lot of purposes. When I've got 5 children, when I'm each of my kids, I might have a different purpose. When I'm with my grandkids, I have a different purpose. When I'm running one of my companies, I have a different purpose. Life is not just one purpose, but it's nice when you can find something that drives you underneath it all, right? Yeah. It's like, I've never been into motivation. I've never believed in motivation. I don't believe you should go to your garden and chant, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. Like, you got to see the problem and pull it out. You got to make it happen. But you got to find what drives you. Like, if you're overweight, you're motivated to eat, right? It's pretty obvious. I want to find what drives you long term. And to find that, you need to go to different environments. You need to try things and let something hit you. Get around where things are better. Get around things that are more challenging. Because you and I both had that experience in my own personal life.
That's hard in a day-to-day rhythm where you just do the job, you go the same way, you do the
what's
same
really
things.
hard, if I may say, what's really hard is doing the same day-to-day stuff over and over again and being so unfulfilled. That's really hard. And what's coming in the next 36 months, many people are not going to have that choice.
So speak to that. You've spoken to me a little bit, kind of the unrest, the AI, all these things, but you're claiming the next 36 months is going to be more change than the last 100 years?
In the next 3 to 10 years, there'll be more change than we've seen in 100 years. And to give you an idea, in the 1900s, since that time, say 120 years, we went from doubling the human lifespan, from 32 in this country, 79. We have tripled per capita income in the world. We have taken the cost of food down 30-fold. We have taken 80% of the population of the world in 1900 was in extreme poverty, 80%. According to the World Food, now you're looking at it 8%, right? So that much change in 3 to 10 years, but I would argue to you 36 months, because here's what's happening next 36 months. There's zero question we'll have AGI. Now, we're very close right now. AGI means one AI is smarter than any individual on a subject, science, chemistry, art, whatever it is. We're 5 to 6 years max, according to the smartest people, and I've interviewed them all in technology, for super intelligence. That means, to give you a perspective, one AI is smarter than all humans combined. Okay? When that happens, it produces a lot of uncertainty in people. But what actually is happening is people are not going to be replaced by an AI. They'll be replaced by someone who knows how to use AI. I don't mean how to use it like Google. I mean how to use it as your assistant to go to work for you. Agentic AI. That's what's happening right now. And there are jobs that are going to be displaced. So we need to reskill those people and show them a job where they can make more money and still be interested and have more of their power. So I'm doing the reskill.
Like you said, like electricians, nurses.
We need a 500,000 electricians right now. And that's not going to be replaced by an AI.
Right.
And by the way, you graduate as an electrician right now, minimum wage is $85,000. Truck drivers make $65 to $85 at the top. Top wage is $250,000. We have 500,000 nurses we need. They make over $100,000 a year now. So if you're more heart-driven there, if you're more hands-driven here, if you're more head-driven, everybody said become a software engineer. Well, I have a friend, the vice chairman of IBM. His daughter crunches code, takes 20,000 words and pushes it down to 200, makes it more efficient. She gets $1 million to do that until now. Agents this year came out, they can do it in 1 hour. Her $1 million income is gone. But there's going to be a massive reskilling needed of human beings. And there's a need to deal with uncertainty. Because we're used to, like most people, have rented certainty. What I mean by rented certainty is your life is a certain way and you feel certain about it until COVID comes and they shut down your business, say you can't run your restaurant. Until the FDA comes in and says there's something wrong with it. Baby. Until somebody in your family says, I don't love you so much anymore. It's your kid, right? Or until a divorce, or until your house burns down, or until you get a diagnosis. And then all of a sudden your whole world's upside down. Well, our lives are not certain driven. This is a very short period, roughly since World War II, where there's been this kind of certainty for such a long time. And we're used to it. But we're not made for that. We're made to grow. And the world is going to demand that we grow. And if you sit back and you don't call it tight, you don't anticipate what's coming, you're going to have a lot of stress and there's going to be real problems in our society. So I'm working to help businesses build agents because they replace the drudgery work so people can focus on what they're more skilled at.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm helping reskill people in all these areas so they can get a job and no money out of their pocket to do it. So the full element of scholarship for them. I'm working to create tools with AI that can be real coaches because the goal is sycophancy, is to keep you online.
Right.
Versus we've built a system with 50 different languages, with more than 50 therapists, older, younger, and they can coach you or take you from where you are where you want to go.
Accelerate the change. Accelerate the change.
Accelerate it fast, and it's worth 24/7, and you'll tell people.
So we hear college graduations this year when AI is brought up, they boo and they
boo.
So I just was my daughter just graduated from college. So speak to that. I just put 75 interns, amazing, smart people into the company to shake us up this summer. Speak to that generation. What did they, all of this is going to happen.
Yes.
If you're them right now,
yes.
If you're 25
yes.
and you're entering this, it's a huge opportunity
yes.
if you have the right mindset. What's the mindset message that you have for them?
The mindset is you have to get good at 3 skills. Skill number 1 is pattern recognition. Think about this. As a farmer, as anybody, what took us from hunter-gatherers who were starving, trying to survive, fearful every day we're going to have enough food, to staying in one place? One, pattern recognition, the recognition of the pattern of the seasons. That 3 out of 4 seasons, if you planted, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you get nothing. Once we learned it's springtime, protect it through the hot summer, reap in the fall, and keep some for winter, that's when we got to build a community, a family, a city, a country.
Pattern recognition.
So you have to get good at pattern recognition because that's how you learn and that's how you get out of fear.
Okay, what's the second
skill is pattern utilization. Well, it's one thing to recognize the pattern so you're not reacting out of fear. You say, oh, okay, I understand this. It's another saying, I can use this. So Starbucks was not generated because a man had a genius idea. He was in Italy for the summer and noticed the pattern. And he noticed that, guess what, these Italians, they don't want to go straight home afterwards. They don't want to go to a bar. They want to go somewhere else and decompress. Or even on the way to work, they want to decompress. And instead of like we had back then, how do you want your coffee? Milk and sugar or black? That was it. He saw they charged way too much for these little specialty things, made people feel special, create an environment. He came back to Starbucks and said, we got to do this. They said no. He raised the money to buy them out. And next thing you know, he got Starbucks. So he not only saw the pattern, he used it.
Yeah.
And that gives you power.
So the third one is?
Pattern creation.
Yeah.
If you learn to play music, you learn someone else's pattern to create rock and roll or Bach or Beethoven or whatever. Once you've played it enough and you know how to use those keys, there's a moment when you come through and now you create something that's never happened before. Your job today is to be a creator. I'll finish with this. Most people's stress is because they're managing. They're managing their job. They're managing their income. They're managing their kids. They're managing their living. We weren't made to manage. We were created, and I believe you can use it God, you can use the universe. I prefer God, but we are created by something with the ability to create. And when people are managing, we're not managed to manage our circumstances. No. We're made to create things. And we are in a time where anyone can create anything if they learn a few skills. And you got to decide, are you head, hands, or heart? Like, what do you love to use most in you to be a creator? Because if you're in agriculture, hell, you can use technology. You can use, there's so many tools available that are going to revolutionize our world. It is the greatest time to be alive if you're not afraid. And if the only way to not be afraid is educate yourself.
All right, one other skill I've seen from you I just got to tap into is the story of you struggling with one business, and one book you recommended I read this summer was Scaling.
Yes.
This spring. And you scaled. You now have how many companies?
121, 22 billion in business.
As you're
now.
helping me with hunger, you turn around and look at the impact you're having on training and getting people out of AI, the conference you just did last month on skilling people all over the world on AI. How do you scale? How do you multiply? Because everybody's probably seeing, they see people and go, how do you do so much? How do you do it?
Well, I have different tools for managing it all, but in order to scale, most people think it's a special strategy. And what I always tell people is strategy is easy. It's psychology that matters. Like 80% of success is the right mindset that'll get you to use the strategy. I could show you how to do something strategically, and most people don't do it, right? So you got to shift this first. So the way you shift it is you got to find something, like humanity is driven by desire. You have to figure out what desire is inside you. So if you can come up with a big enough goal, an unreasonable goal, it's unreasonable, but it is achievable, that you know doing it has such impact that not only inspires you, but other people like we've done jump on board with you.
Yeah.
That's the first step. You got to get something compelling enough. Then you got to
in 10, 20, 30x. I mean, that's
right.
what's
So it's got to be
highlighted in your book.
gigantic, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to have some reasons that are strong enough to keep you going when it gets tough, because as you know, it's gotten tough many times, and you'll give up otherwise. It has to be a must. So the second key is you got to have a deadline, and the deadline's got to be short. So when I said I'm going to feed 1 billion meals, as I said, the secret was saying what I'm going to do this year, because that's what you're called to do the next morning. I got to do 100 million meals this year. Wow, I got to figure a new plan to do that. So that deadline, and then now what will increase it is human capital. You and I are human capital. The people in your team are human capital. All the people in the farming industry that have helped us, human capital. Bobby is human capital. If you have a business, and I own sports teams, and you've got, LeBron James, he's on your balance sheet. Because if he's not there, it's not the same business. Well, human capital really belongs on your balance sheet. You get the right human capital. I always say to people, don't ask how to do it, who can do it, right? That's why I worked with you. And then lastly, with AI, you can accelerate everything. Those 5 elements: have the clear vision, have a strong enough must, deadline that's tight enough to call you to action, great human capital, and AI, there's literally nothing you can't create.
So good. We're out of time. I got a whole bunch of other questions, but kind of a final closing. First of all, thank you. You are a man that is everything you talk about.
Thank you, buddy.
You execute, you live it.
As do you.
And you have, as my daughter gave a little graduation speech and said, you are the 5 people you're around, but also find 5 that take you places that you wouldn't go. You've been one of those 5 for me. You've pushed me beyond goals and a lot of other people. So thank you. And I think thank you on behalf of American protein agriculture and what's going to happen, and the revolution you and I are going to create as we take this thing global over time.
It's an emergency. You can hear it.
You can hear it. So we're going to make that happen. So any final words from you to everybody that's been behind this coalition that you'd want to
I just want to say thank you to everyone who's helped, anybody who chooses to help going forward. I mean, there's no child that should go to bed hungry. I mean, we live in a world where every 10 seconds a child dies of hunger. If hunger was a country, it's the 3rd largest country in the world, and we have enough resources on this planet to do it. It just takes a few of us making decisions that are different than other people and deciding to serve. And when you do, we get rewarded way more than the people we give to, because I really believe the secret to living is giving. It sounds corny, but I wrote that in my book one day when I was really stressed when I was like 20 years old, and I still have it today. That's my guiding force. So if you be a blessing, you'll be blessed. Wow. And that's all we want to do each day.
God bless you. And, they say Elon Musk is changing the world. Yes. I'd say Tony Robbins, quietly, you are a force.
Tony
that's
and
right in there. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. It's been great to be with you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.